This podcast contains adult language and stories of true crime. If you don't like laughing, crying, or being horrified at the actions of other humans, this podcast is not for you.
Hi, listeners, and welcome to a listener short stack.
Hi!
We are so happy you're here. We've got some great things to read to you and share with you and stories to tell that mostly came from you. So thank you for sharing them. Okay.
So the first message that we got was from our listener Donna via Facebook in our Facebook group. And she says, want detailed information about Steve Wilson's escape from prison? And then she says, Steve Wilson's case was in Season 3, Episode 17, Personal Beverage Reasons, the episode released today. There is an Ear Hustle podcast episode that interviews Steve Wilson about the story of his escape and his meeting with the parole board. She says, it's so wild to hear two podcasts that I love cover the same story from the opposite perspectives. If you have 35 minutes to spare, listen to the Ear Hustle episode titled, quote, Getting a Date from Season 1 and released in October 2017.
Wow. Okay, so I definitely have listened to that.
That's what I was thinking. I bet you've listened to it and you just forgot.
Yeah, you didn't realize.
Just didn't realize.
You definitely should go back and listen to it.
I will. And I Googled Steve Wilson, but I even did like Steve Wilson podcast. I'll usually do that for our segments. And nothing came up, but.
Oh, wow.
I'm so glad that you told us about that, Donna, because obviously I love Ear Hustle and I have heard that episode. I never put together that it was the same person I had eventually.
Well, you probably listened to it forever ago.
It was 5 years ago. So.
I mean, I can't remember anything from even my own podcast. So.
Yes, we know.
Yeah. All's fair.
As we know.
Yeah. So, yeah, I want to go back and listen to that, too. I think that's super cool, the two different perspectives.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Donna.
Okay. This one is from Alexandra via email. It says, hello, ladies. I apologize in advance for this long email. I have a story I thought I'd share. I think y'all will find worth the read. A couple of days ago, I realized I hadn't finished listening to Season 3, Episode 10, Bring Your Donkey.
That's funny.
It is funny.
A funny title.
I kind of love that we do that because when people reference it, they do it so casually, and I find it so mortifying.
Yeah.
They're like, you know that episode, Bring Your Donkey? And I'm like, God, why did we think that was a good idea?
I love it.
Oh, boy.
Okay. So I decided to finish listening to the episode while listening to the sad case of Nylene K. Marshall and the letters of the supposed kidnapper sent. In particular, content warning here, trigger warning here. In particular, spoon-feeding her his semen reminded me of my third and part of fourth grade teacher, Mark Berndt.
Oh, God.
Mark wasn't only my teacher, but he was also my younger brother's fourth grade teacher. If you Google his name, this dick bitch will pop up. He made history by causing the biggest lawsuit against LAUSD ever. He made headline national news, unfortunately for unspeakable crimes. Although there is no mystery to what I'm going to share, Bring Your Donkey episode was triggering. Back in 1991, I attended Miramonte Elementary. It's a school in LAUSD. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles in a very impoverished neighborhood, especially back in the 90s. I can honestly say more than 90% of the student population lived below the poverty level. Every single student that had attended Miramonte participated in the National Free School Lunch Program. Long story short, Mr. Berndt was the, quote, cool teacher for many. I was never abused by him that I am aware of, but I do remember being 8 years old and finding some of his behaviors odd, and he would give me creeper vibes at times. Let me describe Mr. Berndt so you can get some type of idea and visual. This asshole was notorious for wearing short shorts. Emphasis on short. And then she said, please view attached example pics below. And she attached pictures, and they are very short, like 80s style.
Yeah.
Like exercise shorts. Rain or shine, he would wear these shorts. He wore them every single day. I am aware that those shorts were brought to his attention more than a handful of times throughout the years that I attended school there. He would return to class, trying his best to adjust them, and he would just say, "Who wears short shorts? I wear short shorts."
No.
Yuck. However, he kept wearing them and instead would hide from the principal and teach the class to keep a lookout for the principal.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my gosh.
That's a big no if your teacher is ever saying to keep a secret from other teachers.
Mm-hmm.
She says he always drank Cactus Cooler soda because he loved the desert. He claimed to go out to the desert almost every weekend, and he would bring back tarantulas and other critters he found out there, and he would allow them to be loose on our desks, incorporating them as part of the lesson plan. He would mask it as his form of teaching us science, different climates, and wildlife. I remember being terrified as many other kids, particularly the girls. At that young age, I noticed and felt that he would get kicks out of seeing us be afraid. He often announced to the class if any of us were to ever want to go on a weekend, quote, field trip, not school field trip, but a trip with him to go camping to the desert, he would be willing to talk to our parents to see if they would allow us to go.
Oh, no.
Mind you, he was a single, unmarried man. Then she says, hashtag, not all single, unmarried men, but you catch my drift, right?
Yeah.
He would also mention that there was a two student max per trip, since that was all that would fit in his Volkswagen Bug. That was his pride and joy, and he always kept it in pristine condition. Always showed it off to us as we would walk by the teacher parking lot. Another time, I remember going on an actual school field trip, and it was me and another classmate sitting towards the back of the bus. The seat booths in the back were a tad bit larger than the seats in the front. Well, Mr. Berndt chose to sit in the middle of us. Our legs were practically wedged against his hairy legs, and that gave me such an uncomfortable feeling.
Ugh.
4th grade, I was only in his class about a month when it was determined that his class size was too large, and the school counselor asked for volunteers to be transferred to another overcrowded class. I was one of the first to volunteer. Fast forward, I'm in 11th grade, and I am practically sprinting home after school because I needed to rush to change into my work uniform and make it to the train station to get to my part-time job. Our schools were so overcrowded that we were on a year-round school system, so my school year started right after 4th of July. I remember it was a hot day, and I am booking it down the sidewalk after school, trying to make it home, when I hear cat calls. I was in such a rush, I didn't bother acknowledging them by giving the finger until I heard the words, "Who wears short shorts?" When I heard that phrase, I froze. It felt as if all the loud sounds of afternoon traffic on a busy LA street went silent, and all I heard was that phrase. I turned to confirm my disbelief that it was Mr. Berndt that had been giving those disgusting cat calls in his powder blue Volkswagen Bug.
Oh, my God.
And he knew it was me. I had never known what it felt like to have your skin crawl until that moment. Traffic moved on, and he drove off. A few weeks after that incident, as I was walking out of my house onto my front porch, I noticed Mr. Berndt driving by my house on a Saturday afternoon.
What?
He stopped at my neighbor's house across the street. Mr. Berndt lived in Torrance, nowhere near South LA, at least 20 miles away. He was there to pick up my neighbor's 2 brothers, who were about my younger brother's age. I said to my younger brother, "What the hell is Mr. Berndt doing over here and on a Saturday?" My brother responded, "I don't know, maybe taking them out. I know they hang out with Mr. Berndt often."
Oh, God.
I, at that very moment, felt the same skin-crawling sensation. I sternly warned my brother that he better not ever be hanging out with Mr. Berndt or going on any fucking camping trips or day trips to the desert. My brother said, "What you got against Mr. Berndt? He was so cool. He always asked how you were doing when I was in his class."
Oh, no.
Before I can further explain my reasons why I don't want him hanging out with Mr. Berndt, my brother said, "Don't worry, I'm not into the idea of the desert or camping. Plus, although he was a cool teacher, I do find it strange that he's still so close to his students, even on his free time and years after we were in his class." That gave me peace of mind, and we changed the subject. Fast forward again to 2011. I am no longer living in South LA. I'm married with a family of my own, and I'm watching the evening news. Bam, there he is on the news. Although I don't consider myself a victim, I was overcome with emotions. I felt my feelings, even as a small 8-year-old, were validated. I immediately called my younger brother and asked how he felt about the news and let him know I was there to support him in case he had anything to disclose. He assured me he was not a victim. My brother actually had a couple of pictures he had taken with Mr. Berndt while in class. He removed them from where he had them. Mark is a disgusting piece of, and then she put a poop emoji. I truly despise him not only for the crimes he committed, but for preying on families that already felt disparaged by society due to their financial hardships and ethnic backgrounds.
Oh, my God.
He was seen as a godsend by some. He preyed on a community that had absolutely no means to ever have their children experience any kind of outing or extracurricular activity.
Yep.
We didn't have a positive outlet in our neighborhood. No Little Leagues, no YMCA or Boys and Girls Club. Either you joined a gang, got hooked on drugs, or kept yourself at home. I was considered as one of the lucky ones to have a job at 16 because that was seen as an extracurricular activity. Plus, earning a little cash was awesome. So for some parents to have the ever-so-charming, funny Mr. Berndt be willing to take your kids out to keep them off the streets, of course he had them fooled.
Yep. Absolutely.
The thought that he was a teacher at the same school for over 30 years makes me feel it was all by his own design.
Yeah.
But what I find most disheartening is that he was reported by different people several times, but it fell on deaf ears.
Oh, my God.
Part of growing up in South Central LA. Attached are links to articles detailing his crimes, timelines of incidents, etc. Sorry for going on and hope you appreciate the story. As always, love you three queens. You guys are my fave podcast. Love, proud patron, AC from La Mirada, California.
Oh, my gosh.
So, I mean, obviously, he was molesting children.
Wow.
The article that I read that she included said there could potentially be 100 victims. The lawyers involved in the case at the time were saying there's only like 25 or 35 or something like that. But her reference in the beginning from the Nylene K. Marshall story about the spoon feeding the semen.
Yeah, how does that connect? Or do I not even want to know? I feel like I don't
So
even
he was
know.
like, he was molesting children. He was taking them on these weird trips. And then he would like take pictures. And in a lot of the pictures, he would be spoon feeding them his semen or giving it to them on cookies and calling it a tasting test.
What the fuck?
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
Oh
and
my
some of
God.
them, he would usually blindfold them to do the tasting test so they didn't know what was happening.
Oh, my God.
And yeah, sometimes he would like tape their mouths, sometimes he would tape their eyes, and he had all these creepy pictures of these kids.
Oh,
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It's so upsetting that we don't even know who this person is.
I know.
Hundreds of children and taking photographs, and the fact that that's not national news in any way is...
I know.
well, it just shows there's
Yeah.
so many.
There's so much of it that it's only regional to the city or the county
Yeah.
area.
So, and with the short
Wow.
shorts, he was like exposing himself to kids all day long at school, like on purpose.
And the administration wasn't like, just don't wear shorts? I don't understand.
I don't understand that either. There's some stuff in there about the school being investigated because apparently people were reporting issues with him throughout the years and they weren't doing anything. So the school is being investigated.
Oh, wow. So, I'm sorry, was he eventually convicted, or how did it net out?
I mean, he's not, it's in process right now.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that was a crazy story.
Yes, thank you for sending it. I'm so glad that you and your brother were not directly
God.
victims, although I understand that feeling of feeling like this is not right. I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
This person is not.
Definitely
Not
trust your
good.
gut forever and always, girl.
Yeah.
All right, so this comes from Marion C. And she says, this baby boomer loves your podcast.
Yes.
Which I found by accident. I want to know the accident that happened that made her find this.
We're so sorry for your accident.
We're so sorry. In my early 20s, I moved out of my parents' home, not by choice. There was a, quote, psychic not far from my apartment. Life was not great for me at that time. I went. Can't remember what was said, but did give her a bit of money and a gold bracelet. The psychic episode brought back that memory, and we've had a few, so all of them are very similar, though. She says, psychics know how to tune into people with low self-esteem. Though I don't see as many in New York City anymore, publicly, they do still exist, and people still go to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very often incredibly intuitive people, which is a gift in itself. And then the unfortunate thing is, like, I feel like intuitive people can do lots of jobs, but, like, counselor is one that I think of. And I think some psychics are actually, like, really empathetic and care, but it's used for not always the best thing.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself being intuitive and empathetic, like, there are other jobs where you can really help people. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Truly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marianne. We love you.
We love our boomer. We got a Patreon message too, and someone was like, I just want to say that I'm in my 50s, so I'm definitely your demographic. And I'm like, girl, we know we were talking about, like, our main group, the main demographic of people that listen to us.
Yes.
But we know that men listen to us. We know that boomers listen to us. We know. But when we generalize in the, 25 to 40-year-old female demographic that most true crime podcasts are made up of.
Yeah.
But we hear you and we love you and we're so grateful that you're here. And whenever we make that generalization, we are not discounting you. I think.
No. But don't
We
stop
love it.
shouting out to us, because we also love to hear from you.
Yes. Oh, speaking of which, this comes from Daniel, and he says, ladies, one of your straight male queens here. I just want to recommend one of the best true crime novels I have ever read, and not just because my wife Jennifer helped the author with the research.
Oh,
It is
go
called
Jennifer.
I know.
Good job.
God, so cool. It is called Dark Highway, Love, Murder, and Revenge in 1930s Kentucky. He says, this book is more than a true crime novel, murder mystery, or courtroom drama, though it's all those things. It's a time machine. Through some of the most deliciously descriptive writing I have ever encountered, I felt like I was transported to Kentucky in the 30s. From small Appalachian towns to the city of Louisville, this novel explores the power politics that still thrive today through the lens of a murder case.
You're going to get dragged if you don't say Appalachian.
Really?
Yes.
All right, Appalachian. He says, it is a fascinating read, and I really think you would love it. And since I am plugging books, let me say that if you have any kids who love fantasy stories, or you yourselves do, hello. Welcome to my household.
Yes.
You might give my and Jennifer's first book, Princess Rose and the Quest of the Golden Gown, a look-see. Obviously not true crime, this is a story of a princess who must undertake a magical journey to become queen of her homeland. It should be an enjoyable read for fantasy lovers of all ages. Oh,
cute.
I love that. Love the podcast. Jennifer and I listen to it in bed every week. I hope you and your loved ones are happy and healthy. Daniel.
That's so nice.
Oh, Daniel.
Love it.
All right, this comes from Brett. Ahoy! New patron, been listening to podcast eps as I binge reruns on Prime Video. Yada yada. Now I'm a little ahead of current, and I'm planning on circling back as new eps come out. Anyway, this morning I watched Season 3, Episode 20, which must have been a classic in that I had memories from back in the day of all the segments, particularly their coverage of the Edgar Case story. Now, I used to own a book and record store here in Pullman and still sell books online as a side gig. Working full-time, I'm pretty bad about staying on top of new listings and usually only have 500-some books listed for sale at a time, and my wares tend to be fringe, weird titles. Today, not even 5 hours removed from watching this ep, I got an email that someone is buying Edgar Case's Story of Jesus paperback from me. Boom. I only have 2 books on the guy currently for sale. This one listed for well over a year and was left over from my old shop inventory. Didn't sell then, didn't sell now until right after reuniting with a classic ep. Can anybody really doubt his psychic prowess now? Just saying. Ooh, something to look forward to coming up really soon for us. Loving the pod. Thanks for all you do. I may be agnostic, but said on my Apple review, you're all doing God's work here, and I'm sticking by that claim, Brett.
Oh, so nice.
That's so nice. Brett, we're not very far away. Pullman's just very far east in Washington, though, and north, but still like 5 hours away.
Oh, really? Pullman's in Washington? Cool.
Yeah, that's where one of the colleges is, Washington State, I think.
Yeah.
All right. So this comes to us from a listener who asked us to refer to her as Lorelei via email. She says, so late 80s, my mom was in her mid-20s. She was an OG true crime stan, had been with my dad for roughly 10 to 12 years, and was a young mom to my older sister. For some reason, Dad's mom has never liked my mom, but I think after my mom called for a, quote, family mystery, she sealed her fate as being the hated spouse. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, no.
Well, we always want to know people's interactions with the show.
Yeah.
She says, I guess it's best to start at the beginning of the, quote, mystery first. In the mid-1950s, my grandfather's half-brother Carl got a girl named Maeve pregnant. They were both late teens, and great-grandma Beatrice did not want to ruin Carl and Maeve's lives and offered to take the baby and raise it. She says, no one ever says if Beatrice planned to raise the baby as hers or a relative's. Both agreed, and Beatrice raised the baby, named Janet. Over 30-odd years between when it happened and my mom contacted Carl ended his life. She says late 70s, so roughly 20 years later. My family lost track of Maeve's whereabouts, but knew she didn't want to be involved in Janet's life. And Janet grew up as Beatrice's only daughter. Mom decided to call to see if they could find Maeve. That's when Dad let Mom in on the actual story. Oh. Back we go to the 1950s. Carl and Maeve find themselves with a bun in the oven. Beatrice offers to take Janet when she's born, but Maeve says she's ready to be a mom and says Carl needs to make her an honest woman. Carl proposes, not super willingly, and Beatrice agrees, but keeps putting off the wedding until after Janet is born. Maeve uses Carl's last name as her own on the birth certificate, and they take their new baby home. A few weeks later, Beatrice offers to watch Janet for the night. Maeve agrees and leaves Janet at Beatrice's home. Next day, Maeve comes to get Janet back, and Beatrice refuses, gets the police involved, and ends up keeping Janet. Lorelei says, so Beatrice was able to slut-shame Maeve into the courts, giving her custody of the baby.
Oh, my God.
Maeve's family wouldn't take her back, and she ended up taking her life within 2 years of the kidnapping.
No.
Carl ended up ending his life in the late 70s. Janet was so emotionally abused, but completely spoiled. She wanted for nothing, got away with anything and everything, and ended up turning to drugs. She had a lot of marriages and a few kids. Got into trouble with some bikers, almost got my mom shot in a drive-by, and just lived the hardest of lives. Beatrice got away with kidnapping, destroyed the lives of her firstborn son and his girlfriend, and ruined any chance for Janet being a, quote, normal person. And then she says, I did want to take a moment to thank y'all for your hard work and amazing show. I really wish your show had existed when I was going through chemo. Recipe hunting and cooking are my main hobbies, but when I was going through treatment, it was the last thing I wanted to think about.
Yes.
She said, so looking back, I should have gotten more into true crime, and I would have loved listening to y'all during those infusions. Keep up the awesome work. I may write in again, if you don't mind, with other adjacent stories. Stay safe. Distantly yours, Lorelei.
Oh, thanks, Lorelei.
What a crazy story. Imagine, thinking you're doing something nice by contacting Unsolved Mysteries to find someone, and everyone's like, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Here's
God.
what you need to know.
Here's what you need to know.
Wow.
Okay, so we have an update on a woman named Erica Ashley Lloyd. Our lovely listener, Mona, reached out to us back in, I guess, early summer, letting us know that a friend of her family had just disappeared into thin air. Her car was found with the front windshield smashed and the back windshield smashed in Joshua Tree State Park.
Well, yeah, it said it was damaged, but it didn't look like she had crashed.
So she hadn't gotten into an accident, but both windshields were smashed, which is very strange. Like, I remember thinking that was really odd. But there was no damage to the vehicle besides that. So Mona had asked us on our Facebook group if we could post the article and post photos and, just let our listeners know, because we do have a lot of listeners in Southern California and out there in the desert. And so recently, I guess this was last week, we found out that they found her remains. So her remains were discovered on January 31st in Joshua Tree. And they retrieved partial skeletal remains, and then they called in a forensic specialist. He was able to identify Lloyd using her dental records. And how she died remains undetermined because the remains were skeletal. So Mona posted a statement that her brother made that I'd like to read. He says, "As the brother of Erica Lloyd, I would like to address the public on behalf of our family. On January 31st, 2021, human remains were discovered by hikers in the vicinity of Danby Road and Amboy Road in Wonder Valley, California. It is with a heavy heart to announce that these remains have been identified by San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department as my sister Erica. There's no easy way for me to tell you all this, and there's no easy way for us to receive it. My wish is that we can all lean a little closer, hold each other up, and remind each other more often that we're here for one another with open arms and endless love. It's what she would have wanted. It's the spirit of who she was." He then says, "Close to 8 months have passed since Erica disappeared, and we have been blessed by countless efforts of selflessness and compassion on part of the community and our family. We would like to thank the men and women of San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, to include their families and all the men and women who perform searches in the desert. You have all been nothing short of a miracle for us." So, in the comments, someone replied to Mona, and then she replied that, they still don't have a cause of death. And I don't know exactly what she said, but from what she said, it made me think that perhaps either she or the family thinks that foul play was maybe involved. I know I read in an article that I think her mother or her sister said that she had spoken to her right before she disappeared, and she sounded a little manic.
So, yeah, they said that it sounded like she was driving and she was just talking really, really fast.
Yeah.
And I guess she had been saying for months, because of COVID and everything, she's like, I just need to get away. Yeah. I just want to get away and go somewhere.
She had really been struggling with COVID, and also I think maybe her business was profoundly affected by COVID. I don't know if it was a restaurant or something, but yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I guess as they investigate more, obviously we'll keep you guys updated. Mona, please keep us updated, and we're thinking of you, and we're so sorry for your friend and their family. Yeah. So a sad end. It would have been really nice for her to turn up.
So sad. Okay. So this is from Melissa S. via Patreon. And you might remember in our last listener short stack, one of our writer inners said something about hearing Stack's narration in her head. And so Melissa says, I thought it was totally normal to imagine how UM/Dateline would narrate your last day. It's not? I also have a deal with my best friend that, should the need arise, will tell Keith Morrison things like, quote, she sucked the life out of every room she entered, or she'd give you the shirt off her back, whether you wanted it or not. She was always just taking her top off. It's a good one to end on. So
my God. That made me laugh so hard.
There needs to be a spoof SNL skit about that.
100.
Oh my gosh. I was like, yeah, imagine people being like, she was really mean to waiters.
She was really quite a bitch.
She was mostly a bitch. No one ever says that. Who are all these women that light up rooms?
Yes, exactly. They're just glowing from the inside.
Yeah.
All right. Patrons. Nope, not patrons.
All friends.
Skip it. Cut it.
Patrons and everyone else, too.
Patrons first, though.
Yeah, patrons first. Listeners, thanks so much for writing in. If you want to write in, you can do so at resolvedmysteriespodcast@gmail.com. And we're just looking for interesting stories that you have, nostalgia you have around the actual show, Unsolved Mysteries, but also any cases you're close to. If you have anything like that, we'd love to read it in sort of a narrative form. So if you could write the story beginning, middle, and end, and sort of just make it as easy for us to read and share with listeners as possible, that'd be really awesome.
Please don't just paste a link in there, because then that means we either have to read a whole article or edit down an article. We want to just read your story.
Yeah.
If you want to give us a link, but please don't just email us a link.
Yeah, supplemental links. Right, but
we do have, we love all these stories, and yet we are also simultaneously researching our segments for the main feed, the main show. So we don't necessarily need to do more research, but you can do the research for us and then just send it to us and we'll read that.
I guess there's no good way to say that, right?
Yeah, we're trying to be nice, but just, you know what we need. You know it.
You know what we're looking for.
You can also contact us at Resolved Mysteries Podcast on Instagram and maybe Facebook and Twitter. It's that too.
it's Resolve the Pod over there.
Facebook and Twitter at Resolve the Pod.
At Resolve the Pod.
And then Resolve Mysteries
professional
Podcast at gmail.com. And then I haven't checked our P.O. box in like a month.
Oh my gosh. I keep driving by it thinking I need to go in here.
Well, okay. Between the two of us, maybe we'll get there in the next 30 days.
Oh boy, it's probably just overflowing.
I
with
hope
gifts.
so.
Oh my gosh, just spilling over. Our P.O. box runneth over.
Oh gosh, it always happens.
So it's P.O. Box 14005, Portland, Oregon, 97293. And that's it. That's all the ways.
That's it.
Plenty of ways.
And that is all.
You're good.
And we love you, and we thank you for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Love ya.
No links. Thanks.
No links.
Bye.
Bye.
No links. Bye.